Today, we're talking about something deeper than money, something that quietly shapes generations, emotional inheritance. Because before families build wealth, they must first heal. On this powerful episode of Girl Talk Mental Health, the therapist takeover, I'm sitting down with a special guest, Miss Valerie Kuykendall Rogers, to unpack a truth most families never talk about. You cannot build generational wealth on unhealed generational wounds. So, welcome, Miss Valerie Kuykendall Rogers, to the show. Well, welcome. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are.
Well, my name is Valerie Kuykendall Rogers. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor here in the Houston, Texas area. I've been doing therapy for a couple of decades and a half now. I don't want to age myself too much. And I really specialize in complex trauma or complex PTSD, especially in the area of relationships, whether that's intrapersonal or interpersonal relationships. And I have a private practice, like I said, here in the Houston area, and I also do in person and online individual and couples counseling.
All right, sound interesting. So, are you ready for this conversation today?
Oh, ready as I'll ever be. Yes, ma'am. Let's go. Let's make
All
it happen.
right, so we're
Yes.
talking about the financial wealth and emotional healing that's connected to it. So, and
Hmm.
many people they only just focus on the financial wealth, but
Hmm.
rarely emotional wealth, right? So,
Right.
how do unhealed emotional wounds influence generational outcomes?
Well, let's first start by even just defining what generational trauma or transgenerational trauma is, right? And it refers to the transfer of emotional and psychological pain from one generation to the next. So, with that being said, that really does impact, because I know we all like to focus in on building generational wealth, teaching our children about how to handle money and making sure that they have property or things that you yourself may not have had as a child growing up. And I really kind of coined that as parenting from our past and not our present. And so all of those traumas and things that we've endured in our past can be transferred, whether explicitly or implicitly, to our children. And that gets in the way of them to be able to really embrace and be able to handle the generational wealth that is being passed down to them.
Yeah, that's good because you do have to have a sound mind and well being
Right?
to be able to handle whatever is passed down to you anyway.
That's
And just
correct.
by what you were saying, that I kind of think about poor Britney Spears. The stuff that she has
Right.
going on and her money and how it
Exactly.
affects her adult kids and everything. And her recent, what she
Exactly.
got a DUI or something recently or whatever.
Right.
So,
Yeah, you
mm,
see all these celebrities and stars, even the DJ. I forgot what his name was that was on Ellen DeGeneres' show, who, um, had death by suicide, right? All these people that you feel like are doing really well in their lives have all the things that they could ever want and need. And yet, when they get all of that, they don't know how to handle that, right?
mm,
They don't know how to handle and deal with all of the pressures and the stressors that come with having these things. And so, healing emotional wounds can ensure that the generational wealth that you're passing down is secured and being able to continue to pass down generation to generation, because it starts with breaking that cycle. And once you break it, then that begins to also perpetuate itself as well.
That's good. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, and especially as a therapist, or if you have some personal experiences,
Mhm.
what are some common family patterns that keep people stuck for generations?
First, and typically, we don't talk about our emotions, right? We don't talk about the things that are going on in our lives. We have this like unwritten rule: don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, right? You don't talk about things. You don't express how you're really feeling about things, and you really don't trust anybody outside your family system to talk about those things. We always keep these things kind of hidden and inside or within the family system, and that continues to perpetuate this idea that I've got to keep everything to myself, right? That I can't trust that somebody else could be there to help support me emotionally. And so now we're kind of getting into this thing of like, well, I might as well not tell anybody how I feel, because when I tell my mom or my dad or anybody in my family, it's either dismissed, it's dissed, it's ridiculed, I'm talked about, and so you really get shamed, right? And
Mhm.
then you start to feel guilty about having any other emotion than happy, joy, the desired emotion that keeps the family and the family system going. And so
Mhm.
that's some of the things that I've seen that gets people stuck and not being able to move forward, is because we just don't allow for emotions to really be expressed, especially if they're different from the parental emotions or the person who's in authority in that particular family system, right?
Right.
Uh, you've got to feel what they feel, and heaven forbid you say you're unhappy about something, because then they sometimes they take it personally. They and it's like, well, you got to roof over your head, food on the table, right? That's what we're told. So why are you upset? You
Yeah.
know, why are you happy? Why are you unhappy? What are you talking about? You feeling depressed? You got food to eat, don't you? You
Then
got
you
all
feel
this stuff.
guilty. Yeah. Uh-huh. So
You
you
feel
got to
all
stick with that mainstream
right,
emotion, even if it's outside the family, what your friends feeling and what you
right,
think they feeling anyway, because
right.
everybody not showing how they truly feel. Well, most
No,
people
no,
not anyway.
no, no.
Hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. There was another question I wanted to ask. I forgot what it was. But anyway, okay, it'll come back to my brain. It was something good. So
Yeah.
what about how some people become what we call cycle breakers, which is
Hmm.
what is the goal is. Oh, I know I want to say people who can't express themselves with families and
Hmm.
friends and other people. That's why therapy is important because
Right,
you can express whatever feeling you want. You're
right.
not going to be judged. Hopefully, you're
Mhm.
not, or typically you're not. And
No,
it's just a place where you can just freely talk about whatever your emotion is, whether you think it's common or uncommon, in a safe space. And then, you have somebody that can listen to you that's non judgmental. That's what I wanted
right.
to
And
say.
you begin to break the cycle of shame and guilt that
Mhm.
continues to keep you in these patterns, these stuck patterns, right? And
Mhm.
just continuing the transfer of the transgenerational trauma, right?
Mhm.
Because you're being taught to not feel or not trust, and so you do that with your own kids, and then they do it with their own kids. You've been taught, like, well, it happened to me, right? Whatever the abuse was or whatever the trauma was, and I carried out okay, you'll be all right, right? It's
Mhm.
just this idea of, like, it's not that you'll be all right, just take it to God. I'm not saying to not take it to God, but it's like you take it to God and just leave it there. But we do know that Jesus was a counselor, right?
Mhm. The
And
greatest counselor.
right, the greatest counselor. And so then I would imagine that Jesus then created people that can also be counselors for you as well, right? So
Mhm.
there's precedent in the Bible for you seeking out a counselor, right?
Disciples, yeah.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
salvation comes from the root word salve, which means to heal.
Mhm.
Okay. So seeking salvation means seeking healing.
Mhm.
And so we seek healing in the face of Jesus, but also in the face of with other people that are trained to be able to do that. And make sure you go to someone that you feel comfortable and safe enough to do that with. Because
Absolutely.
not everybody that has a license is just because they're licensed doesn't mean they're the right person for you. Find the
Absolutely.
right person for you that you feel like you can be yourself with, because it begins there. It really does. It
Mhm.
begins with you feeling comfortable enough to be your authentic self.
And it
Right.
might not be the first person you see. So, you
Exactly.
might see a person and then you're like, oh, that person not my match. And people will do one or two things. Either they'll stay stuck with that person that's not matching to them and not truly get the help that they need, or they
Mhm.
just stop therapy altogether and never ever try to explore a different person because of the first experience.
That is correct, and we want you to know that there's your first experience doesn't have to be your last experience, and that's another thing about transgenerational or generational trauma, right? It's this idea, like, well, if I don't have a corrective experience, right, an experience that's different than what I've had, then I believe that this is all there ever is,
Yeah.
right? And that's what therapy helps you with. It lets you know that there's a different way you can be, and a different way you can feel, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's a part of it too, for
Well,
sure.
and then for some of the people who don't know, because some people don't know what those feelings are, what are some of the common signs and symptoms when people are feeling stuck or in those generational curses and cycles?
People pleasing is number one,
Mhm.
right? Hard to set boundaries, right? Having really unhealthy relationships, getting attached to people really quickly, having a hard time detaching from unhealthy relationships. Um, and just feeling this and a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that we talked about before. So even more than just the sadness or the anxiety or the fear, right? And fear is a lot of it's fear based as well, right? But mostly a lot of shame. You'll find yourself and having low self confidence and low self esteem, even though outwardly you're doing well, right?
Mhm.
You got the best job, you got the best car, you got the best house, you got all these things, but it's still never enough. There's something
Mhm.
missing.
Right.
There's something missing, and you just don't know what that is. And that's another signal about it as well.
Well, that's good. So, what does it actually look like to be the person who interrupts unhealthy generational patterns? Who is that person?
Um, Two things that can happen, and these things that seem like they're opposing can happen at the same time. It's scary, but it's also liberating.
Mhm.
Okay. The fear of the backlash, right? What will my family or friends or whomever is important to me in my life, husband, wife, whatever, what would they think of me if I start to find out what it is I truly want for myself and then take steps to achieve that?
Mhm.
And that goes against what the family system likes. I call it,
Mhm.
it's like an air conditioner, right? This family system is trying to maintain this homeostasis, even though it's traumatic, right?
Mhm.
And so they want to take the temperature, let's say at 65 degrees, right, where it's nice and cold. Well, you want it at 68. So as soon as the temperature rises to 68, the air conditioner kicks on and drops it back to 65. Well, that's what the family does. The family kicks in to do something to affect you to go back to the way the family operates, which is at 65. So whenever you're trying to break this cycle, you're trying to bring the temperature up. And so they're going to enact in ways to either emotionally manipulate or try to manipulate you in other ways, try to shame you into doing the things like you were supposed to do, right, in the family. So it's a scary proposition because one, I'm trying to number one, attune to my own needs. And two, I'm trying to also have some level of autonomy. And those things are very scary because we don't want to break our connections with our family members or those we care about. So it's a very scary thing. That's why this thing is not just cognitive, but it's also emotional. There's a lot of things going on inside of you that keeps you stuck. And it's those things that I'm fearing that I'm going to lose connection with this family. So when I'm breaking that cycle, I'm also risking breaking the connection with that family, right?
Mhm.
Or that
Right.
system that I'm trying to break the cycle out of. That is a scary proposition. And at the same time, it's also can be liberating
Mhm.
because it's freeing you up to be your true authentic self. I've seen it time and time again with my clients who begin to break the cycle and they kind of like take that little dip, a little toe in and come out, it's like, that's too scary. That's too overwhelming.
Mhm.
And so that's why working with a therapist such as myself, we walk you through that process very slowly, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not a one and done, it's layers. There's layer upon layer. We are very, very complex individuals. And
Very.
and we need to stop simplifying and say, just do these five little steps and you'll be okay, because that's just not how it works. We're very complex, and so we take our time with those complexities that come up and allow ourselves to feel those things and but work through them so we can expand what we call our emotional capacity, and that's our ability to withstand uncomfortable emotions and feelings.
So
Okay.
they can expect the person that's going to be the generational breaker can expect to be uncomfortable. That's your sign right there. It's uncomfortable. It's not
It's going to
easy.
be uncomfortable,
Mhm.
exactly, because if it was comfortable, it's the same thing you've been doing, right?
Mhm.
It's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be scary, and at the same time you're going to start to feel a lot more freer,
Mhm.
right, and a
A
lot more.
question: if like for your profile, how would a person find a therapist who specifically works with generational traumas? Would it say how do they find you a generational trauma therapist?
Yeah, you can look up the word generational trauma. You can look up the word trauma, or even more. What I say on mine is complex trauma. And in my profile, I will talk about generational curses and generational trauma in those words. So yeah, you can do a Google search, or I'm on Psychology Today. I also have my own website, ascentpsychotherapycenter.org, O-R-G. is, and the name of my practice is the Set Psychotherapy Center, and I just work on restoring, reconciling, and renewing relationships. Okay,
Okay.
not only with others but with yourself, most importantly.
Okay.
And
All right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good place for us to take a quick commercial break, like less than a minute. But while we are on this break, I want you all to think about what's one pattern in your family that you decided will stop with you. If you want to be the generational curse breaker or unhealed trauma breaker, what is that one thing? Because guess what? Your healing might change your entire family tree. And when we come back, we're going to have the second half with Miss Valerie, and she's going to give you more information about that one thing that you wrote down. So go ahead and write it down and get it together so that you can have it and you can actually put it in practice for this second half of Girl Talk Mental Health. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Girl Talk Mental Health. Girl Talk Mental Health dares to go where others won't. We unpack the hard truths about mental health, dissect trending topics, and challenge the stereotypes and stigmas holding us back. From navigating the 6 dimensions of wellness to redefining social norms, this is more than a discussion. It's a revolution in how we care for our minds and souls. Ready for bold, honest conversations that spark change? Let's dive in. It's time for Real Talk with Real Impact.
All right, all right. We are back with Miss Valerie for the second half. If you missed the first half, you missed a bunch of information. You need to go back and watch it, especially if you are the one trying to be that generational unhealed trauma breaker. So, Miss Valerie, how do, because you talked about faith a little bit at the beginning, the first half. So, how does faith, and you talked about identity, how does faith, identity, and emotional healing work together to create a new legacy for future generations?
Well, I mean, in the sense of identity, in the sense of like what? What do you mean by the identity? Let me make sure I'm clear.
Like who you are in yourself, especially in the family dynamic or whatever. And you said you work with people about with them individually. So, and
Mhm.
who your goals are, like who you are in Christ or whatever it is, like your identity.
Okay, yeah, and they work hand in hand in the sense of like, one of my scriptures I like is "Be still and know that I am God." Right, and when you break that down, each word that you drop off still has a meaning. Right, so be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and be still, and ultimately be. Right? We're human beings, not human doings. Right?
Mhm.
Faith does require action. Right? And so I remember that story about Jesus healing the crippled man who was like crippled for like 38 years and was trying to get into the pool of Bethesda for his healing. The
Mhm.
first thing that Jesus asked him was, "Do you want to be well?" So you have to want to be well before
Mhm.
the healing can take place. Right?
That's good. Mhm.
And that's where that faith comes in. I have the faith and belief that God can heal me, but I gotta want it. And that means there's something required of me. I've got to get up, pick up my mat, get up, and then I have to walk. So I have to, I have to be obedient in that, and I have to be working towards that. And so that's what we do in therapy. It's like the first thing I ask, and the thing I ask every client that comes in to see me, is what do you most want for yourself? In that same vein, do you really want to be healed, and what does that look like for you? Right. And so then we work toward achieving those things. And that's how those things can be kind of mixed together. I hope that answers your question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Actually, what you said is like they have to set goals
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
the new legacy to
Right.
know how to do it.
But you got to know what it is that you want to be made well from.
Mhm.
Right, like you said, just identifying what those patterns are, and those patterns could be that people pleasing pattern, right, that not being able to set those effective boundaries, right, that I'm always doing things for other people and not even knowing who I am and what I is I want for myself, right, breaking those patterns of being in unhealthy relationships that involve intimate partner violence or sexual abuse, right.
Mhm.
Those are just some examples of patterns that I want to break, and just normalizing those things as a rite of passage. right? As a thing that happened to me, and it's going to happen to you, and you'll get over it just like I did,
Mhm.
right?
And it can be like within the family dynamics because sometimes we walk on eggshells with
Right,
some mother, grandmother,
exactly.
an
Right.
older, elder adult or whatever. And so that keeps us stuck as well because we're trying to respect them, but at the same time, we kind of messing up that whole legacy and
Right.
breaking the curses.
Yeah, we're afraid to speak, and so
Mhm.
don't speak unless spoken to, right? Not speaking up for yourself, and not being assertive in a way. And assertiveness doesn't mean aggressive; it means being assertive. It means
Or
knowing
what
what you
they say,
want.
be seen and not heard.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Go over there and sit down. Um, this grown folks conversation, right? That we learned as a kid, but now we're no longer kids, but we continue to act in those same ways. And that's what happens is when we turn into adulthood, the things that we learned and ingested and observed as a child continues on into adulthood, and we don't even recognize it.
Absolutely. For the person that's watching that can identify with these generational cycles and unhealed emotions, and that's carrying the emotional weight of their family, friends, work, or whatever, what is the very first step towards generational healing?
First of all, you got to recognize that the patterns are happening, right? You can't change something you're not aware of, right? Second thing is like going to seek out a counselor that is trained in trauma work and trauma informed therapist and trauma work. That's second. Third is also willing to start breaking that shame cycle, right? So those are those first three steps. But number one is like, when you're praying to God and in your prayer closet and doing your intercessories and things like that, right? Things we do is we ask God to take things away from us instead of asking God to reveal things to us,
Hmm.
right? So let's ask for that, right? God, what is it that you would want me to know? God, what is it that you would have me to do?
Right. Remove those rose colored glasses, right, and see
Right.
things clearly based off of the Holy Spirit. Absolutely.
Right, right. Ask for that and let that be your guide, right? Instead of asking God to take things away from you, asking God to help you, give me guidance on how or what that is that I even need to be taken away from me, right?
Hmm.
And then that could be your guide, and that's your first step, right? Because that's how you integrate your faith and your identity into, and then healing the wounds, the emotional wounds, and the transgenerational trauma, right? We got to start with that acknowledgement that there's something there, there's something missing. God, I don't know what that is, but could you please show it to me?
Reveal it to me.
Right?
Absolutely.
Make it plain, make it seen. God, speaking your still small voice, right? Right.
So, what would be a final tip or tool or whatever final word of encouragement you would have for the audience about this generational healing and unhealing
Mhm.
cycles that's going on?
I've seen time, and I'm really encouraged about this generation. Really, I've seen a lot of my clients are of African American descent, or females and males, and they're coming more and more and willing to and wanting to do things differently and wanting to learn things differently and wanting to be different, so that they don't continue to do those same things with their children and the things that they may have already done, about eliminating that shame and guilt that they have over that and moving forward in their life in a different way. This is possible. Just because you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, I don't care how old you are. You're never too old or young to start, and it begins with you. If you really want to build generational wealth, start with building generational well being. And that is what we definitely deserve to have.
Absolutely. That's good. Well, we sure appreciate you coming in today. So, tell the audience where they can connect with you, or if you have some type of offer or you have something going on that they would know about.
Well, you can reach me on my website. It's psychotherapycenter.org, right? You can also find me on Psychology Today under my name, Valerie Kuykendall Rogers. I am doing some retreats, guys, that are going to be coming up, and I'm going to be doing those next year. And what we're talking about is wellness retreats. And so we're going to be looking into wellness and healing from racial trauma and transgenerational trauma,
Mm,
at sea. So we're going to be doing this on a beautiful ocean ship,
okay.
ocean luxury liner. I'm looking forward to doing that next year. So I'll be putting that information on my website within the next couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that information. I would love for you to join us on that journey.
Absolutely.
It's a way for us all to get together and learn how to breathe, relax, and begin that healing process and moving forward from the generational trauma that we've endured.
All right, well, I'll be looking for my invite, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, of course. That list. Yes, ma'am, for sure.
Alright. So today on Girl Talk Mental Health, we unpacked a powerful truth. Generational wealth cannot grow where generational wounds remain unhealed.
That
So
is correct.
rewatch the episode, take notes, review the reflection question, and discover how healing your emotional life may be the most powerful legacy you ever leave. Your healing might not change your life, but it's peaceful, it's wisdom, and it's emotional freedom. And we want to welcome you to watch Girl Talk Mental Health next week, where we have another powerful episode. So y'all be blessed. Go connect with Miss Valerie, and we'll see you next time.
All right, y'all. Thank y'all for listening, tuning in. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you for joining us for Girl Talk Mental Health. Remember, your mental health is your wealth. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to at Virginia Del Manning.